I'm hearing sound in the background. Hi, this is Lori with Wisdom Keepers and Powerful Women's Gatherings, and I am with Anka Herman today, and she's going to do a whole little I'm saying this really crappy, sorry, on podcast. Now I'm hearing people coming in, which is great that people are starting to join us. I know Jenny's here, and I'm
Diane
here.
has just arrived.
And who has?
Diane.
Diane's just arrived. I can't see anybody. I can only see your beautiful face. But anyway, so we're here to listen to you, share with us how we can make podcasts part of our business. And I forget what the title is, but you can, when I shut up, you can go ahead. Because I'm doing a really lousy job of doing an interview with you right now. Which just proves it doesn't really matter anyway. So I love you, Anka, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to share with us.
Well, thanks. Thanks so much, Lori. That was such a funny introduction. I'm gonna share my screen straight away, and then we'll just take it from there. Well, now now I have to actually kind of find the thing to see whether I can. I'll just go and see whether I can actually do. Can you see? Oops. I'm messed up with the buttons here.
I see. Yes, I see. I see. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can see you. Okay, so we're at the beginning now. So you can see the, hang on. If there's, I can't see the, so if you, yeah, I don't really see the chat all that well. So I hope if you have any trouble,
I can see it beautifully.
Good.
Anka, I can see it beautifully. I'm going to mute myself though. So go right ahead. You're good.
Okay.
Good to go.
Good to go. Alrighty. So the topic is how to use podcasts to find your voice, to have your voice heard, and to share your message, basically. And hang on. And they're really, the reason I'm so passionate about it, because I found a really effective way to build an audience and a network and really get visible or audible, or however you want to call it. And there are really two ways. I'll see whether I can put this up there. Yeah, there are really two ways to use podcasts. And one is to be a guest on other people's shows. And the other part is to actually have your own podcast. Now, before I even go any further, I want to just quickly clarify a bit of terminology, because people kind of often say, oh, you know, I've got podcasts and I enjoy your podcasts. And so there is this mix up about like what a podcast actually is. And I always like to compare it to what your YouTube channel is for video. That's what a podcast is for audio. So the podcast is actually, it's basically the show, and the individual audios are the episodes. And sometimes you can collect a number of episodes into a season, almost like a soap opera or something, or you just have episode 1, 2, 3, whatever, and number them. So, but a podcast is basically a show, right? And so what I would like to cover, and I'm gonna, obviously, I'm aiming to sort of bring this home in about an hour, so we can't really go very deep on any of it, but I want to give an overview how to be a guest on other people's podcasts, and also, you know, how to start your own and what's involved and what to watch out for. And basically what I'd love you to take away from this is to see the power of podcasts, what that actually can do for you, and also to see that it isn't as complicated as, you know, it sometimes looks. So yeah, there are a few decisions to be made, but it's not something to get turned off by because it's like overly complex. So I want to really, and I also want to show you the ones that I've done, and especially the new one that I've just launched. It's so new, it's still fresh, and to see how you can literally start a podcast within, you know, a couple of hours from having the idea. So I really want you to walk away with a sense of possibility, and I want you excited, basically. So, okay, so let's just, I want to quickly start with how to be invited as a guest, because it's the sort of the simplest way, when you don't have to really do anything, to use the medium of podcasts to reach a new, Laurie, I'm gonna see whether I can, oh, okay. Sorry.
What's the problem, honey?
No, I think Laurie has muted herself. I just tried to mute her, and then there's like little buttons here and can't see. So
okay.
Yeah, so actually the why would you want the podcast anyway, right? And it's because, like, there are lots of benefits, and I've actually written a whole article on that I'm going to put in the show notes. I was going to say in the links in the event as well. But the main reason is and why it's actually really interesting for coaches and any kind of service provider who live off the connection and the relationship they have with their audience, because it's such an intimate format, right? I think other than meeting somebody face to face, then there's video and then there's audio, and sometimes audio is actually almost more intimate still, because you have somebody sort of right in your ear. And I really noticed that because I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, and really got that, like, you get a feel for somebody really, really quickly. And so it is actually that a super intimate medium that allows you to build that connection with both with the people listening and also with the people you might have on as guests. That's just really powerful. And on top of it, it's a lot easier, and you'll see it's a lot easier to produce than video, right? Because you don't have the images to worry about, it's just the sound. So the files are a lot smaller, and technically it's just a lot less hassle, right? And you'll see, when you see how the Anchor platform works, like, you'll be amazed. Like, it's just so much simpler than video, but yeah, almost as powerful, and in certain ways even more. So okay, so if you want, before you even start, if you want to just sort of get on other people's shows, so yeah, they're basically five top tips, and I've got a fancy little PDF to download as well that I'll put in the links. But it really comes down to relationships, right? It's like the easiest way to get on somebody's podcast is if you know somebody. And even if you know people who don't have a podcast, like, even just to mention it to them, because you never know who they know. And if I know somebody, if you know me and say, I want to come on your podcast, I'll hardly ever say no, so actually to get on podcasts of people it's just simply the easiest way. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, it's a lot easier to be invited as a guest when you've been interviewed before. So if you've got some videos or audios that you can send to somebody, because a podcast, I'm looking at this, I'm basically giving these tips from both angles, from being a podcast host myself, but then also being interviewed. So I've been sort of in both shoes. And if I'm looking, as a host, I'm looking for guests who make a great show, you know, who are great to listen to, who are easy to deal with. So, you know, and if somebody has been interviewed before and you can see what they're like, you know, it just makes it so much easier to get a host to invite you. Now, yeah, number 3 is leading us almost to the second part of the whole thing. It's like, yeah, I really noticed that once I've started to try and get interviews on other podcasts for quite some while, and some you get and most you don't. But having my own podcast has been, you know, like all of a sudden it's been really, really easy. Like everybody all of a sudden contacts you. So that makes a huge, huge difference. There's a bit of like, okay, I'll come on your podcast and you come on mine. So that is pretty strong. So if you have one, it's going to be a lot easier to get on other people's shows, which then also always means that you get exposure to their audience. You know, and new people can find out about you who otherwise would have never known about you. Now, yeah, quite an interest, or an easy to implement but important tip is like, yeah, make the host's life easy. If I get an email saying, oh, I'd love to be on your podcast, here's a list, here's my website, like go find out what you need to know. Well, there's a good chance that I won't have time for that, and I won't, you know, like, if you contact a podcast host, tell them why you'd be a great guest and how what you want to share is relevant to their audience. You know, how will you help them produce a great show that's valuable for their audience? And if you can give them what they need to know in an easy, you know, I've had people contact me, and, you know, and they have basically like a speakers page, you know, and I've got that. It's like, there's a page, there's my photo, there's a short bio, this is the topics I talk about, here are links to interviews I've done. So, and I've really appreciated that when people send that kind of stuff to me, because I can see in an instant whether that person is a fit or isn't. So if you can make it easy for a host, you're a lot more likely that they'll respond and invite you. And then, yeah, the basics, you know, if you have your headphones and if you sit in a quiet space and, you know, and you don't stuff around with the appointments 5 times, you know, that's all little stuff that adds up. And the other thing that I want to really point out, it's like, yeah, okay, when you first start out, both as a guest and a host, there's a good chance that established shows and super interesting, famous guests who can give you exposure to huge audiences aren't gonna even look at you. You know, so I think it's with anything when you first start out. But that doesn't, I actually didn't think that was a problem at all, because when you first start out, like, you have no idea what you're doing, and you still, and that's, I think, even why I called the thing, you still find your voice. You don't even, so it's actually gives you time to find your groove in the whole thing. And it doesn't take long, you know, when I don't know, I started mine in April, I think it was. I've got like some 20 odd episodes out now. And initially, yeah, I just invited people I knew and people from a Facebook group. And I didn't care that they didn't really have an audience, you know. So it basically grows in this more natural way, you know. And then once you've been around for a while, then you notice people will start contacting you. And then all of a sudden, people who have established podcasts will contact you. And so it's kind of, you sort of grow. But if you sort of try and jump in there in the deep end too quickly, it's just going to be frustrating and isn't going to give you the results that you're looking for. So yeah, here's the little document that you can download to get deeper in any of those. Now we're coming to the interesting parts, is how to actually start your own, right? So, okay, number 1, planning. And if you know me, I'm all about, you know, taking action and don't overthink things, but planning, I think, is really the most important phase of it all. And it's really only like if you want to, if you can skip anything, but you can't skip, the part about the purpose and the intention of the podcast. Why do you want a podcast? What's the whole idea behind it? And who is it for? And why would somebody, and I think that's really the one question that you need to answer for people is, why would anybody give up their valuable time to listen to your podcast? So that's really the question you need to answer, because without that, and you need to answer it both for yourself and for your audience, because if that isn't clear, people won't want to listen to it, and you kind of gonna feel discouraged, and after a while and it's basically just a pain in the butt, and you're not going to continue. So unless you have a fairly strong intention, you're not going to last. And apparently there are statistics that say, well, 95% of podcasts never get beyond 10 or 15 episodes. So loads of people start one, but not a lot of people actually keep going. So that's really the very first, important question to answer. And out of that, almost unfolds by itself, what's going to be the name, the tagline, the description. And then there's, Mira, I'm going to try and mute you. Thank you. So out of that whole, topic, purpose, intention, the name, the tagline, the description, the artwork, which is the square image that is used to sort of recognize your podcast and all of the directories and anywhere. The format, meaning if it's a solo episode, if it's a solo show, if it's an interview or a panel or a mixture of the two, episode length and frequency, all these things that you have to decide. But basically what makes sense is really a consequence of the decision you made about the topic and the audience and the intention behind it. And out of all of those decisions, you will then use that to narrow down the options and choose, what hosting you want to use and how, where you want the home of your podcast to be. So we'll get to that stuff in a little bit later. So yeah, then there's the actual recording, and then, okay, the editing. And so the recording and the editing, that's actually what most people ask about when they ask about how to launch a podcast. The first question is always like, what microphone should I get? And I would say, well, don't worry about the microphone, make sure your podcast has a clear audience and has a clear intention, purpose, and a topic. And get the best microphone you can, but you can just use your mobile phone. So we'll get to that in a second as well. So the same with editing, not just to sum up, like, keep it simple. And okay, and then we'll have a look at how to get this thing out there, basically. So yeah, I've just already sort of gone through this. The planning is really sort of the most important part, because out of that initial concept of it. And to give you an example, I'll see whether I can I'm trying to, oops, no, that's not the one. I'm trying to, I'm going to show you the two podcasts I've got. And there's the Passion Business podcast, and that's a guest show, right? Or where I have I interview, or basically talk to people for about half an hour, and it's about roughly a weekly show. And really the main purpose was to build my network, because basically every single person you speak to, you have them in your world, and it's a really quick way to have a much closer relationship to those people than you could ever on via social media, and if you just sort of comment on people's stuff. So it was really, the idea was to build my network, but also to really crush that 6-figure in 6 week myth that drives so many new business owner in this whole rabbit hole of doubts and stuff like that. So I wanted to use people's entrepreneurial story to illustrate that no, this actually takes longer than you might think, and it's hang on, I'm just seeing. Okay. So yeah, basically the idea is to build my network, and then also to help people who want to start their own business, basically showing them, no, you're doing better than you think, you know, because it isn't a straight process. So if you're having the sensation that it isn't going fast enough, then yeah, basically forget about that, you're doing fine. So that's basically the idea behind that. And so I've just recently launched another one, which is a totally different concept, which is a solo one where it's just me with a bite-size, a few minute episodes to talk about basically topics and thoughts that I would like my audience to know about. It's the kind of stuff that is supposed to help them decide whether I'm somebody they would like to know more about or maybe work with. So it's basically bite-sized, under 10-minute episodes, and I'm going to later show you how I actually did that one, because that I really kind of launched. There was a couple of hours between having the idea and actually doing the thing. So yeah, that's okay. So now if you have your topic and who it's for and what you're trying to achieve, you know, then you have to decide which format and episode length and frequency what you're thinking about. So there's really, you know, like solo is simple in a way, because, you know, yeah, you can launch it in a couple of hours if you want, but it isn't great, for example, if you want to reach new audiences quickly, because, you know, it's just you talking. So it's, you then have to make sure you get this show in front of the ears and eyes of people. So it isn't, so where if there's guests involved, then you always have the help of the guests who, you know, usually share their episode with their audience, which is how you can get in front of more and new people. So there's a couple of other options that, you know, when you can co-host with somebody else, which allows you to talk about your topic, but still offer people a conversation. And, you know, there's guest panels, and people have sometimes combinations of the two, of all of different options. So there's pretty much, you can do whatever you like, but as always, you know, make it as fun as you can, but make sure also it's sustainable. And so episode length and frequency, you know, like some people do quick daily ones, you know, then there's weekly, half hour, longer format, you know, whatever works for you, whatever makes sense in the context of your topic and your intention. Let me go back to the presentation mode. Okay, so now out of those decisions, once you've made those, you know, then the next level of sort of more technical decisions, you know, you have to come up with your cover artwork. That's basically a square image that you know, represents it's the thumbnail you'll see in podcast directories and stuff like that. So you have to, and I use Canva for all of that. You want to have it as simple as possible, and, you know, make sure, the one thing you want to remember there is that the thumbnail is usually really, really small in the listings where it's found. So, you know, you don't want to put any small letters or anything too busy, you know, just make it recognizable and big and make sure it stands out. Music, you can, it's not mandatory, but it does help you create an atmosphere for your podcast. There are directories where you can find free clips that you can use for that. Now, your podcast is going to have to live somewhere, and so there's a number of common or popular hosting providers. They come in the later slide as well, and there you can see if you the plans, the different plans usually they're fairly similar in what they offer in terms of functionality, but basically the plan or the cost of them usually depend on megabytes of files uploaded or time, episode length or whatever. So, if you know that you want to do, a weekly half-hour show, then, you say, well, okay, your audio file is usually, that's what I do, for example, for the Passion Business podcast one. So a file a week is usually around 25 megabytes. So the basic plan that costs about $12, and that allows me 100 megabytes a month. That gives me 4 episodes for half an hour. So that's fine. But if I wanted to have longer episodes or more episodes, then I'd have to look at a different plan. So, basically your choice of format and length and stuff, well, then will influence which hosting platforms you're going to choose. So you want to have a website to go with your podcast. It's not strictly mandatory. You can just, whatever hosting company you use, they give you a little page for your podcast. But you do want your podcast to have a home where you can put your show notes and all the links and the information about the guests. And ideally, you want to send people to your own website and not to your podcast host one. So depending on what the topic is, that can be a standalone website or it can be part of your existing website. So, well, if you have, once you're kind of there and you're still not turned off it all, if you want to, once it comes to recording, there's really okay, keep it simple, you start with what you have, especially with mobile phones these days. There's really no reason why you shouldn't hide behind, technology struggles, that you wouldn't want to let that hold you back from starting your podcast. Most people use Zoom for interviews. I've tried Zencastr. The solo episodes, I use the mobile phone. Some people use Skype. It's just whatever you have. If you have a great microphone, if you have an external microphone, use it. And if you know you want to keep doing this, get one. But it's not mandatory. You can create decent audio quality with what you've got. So editing is the same thing. You can take this as far as you want and you can keep it as simple if you want. I've heard podcasts where they don't do anything. They just record the thing, upload it, and out it goes, right? So that's one way of doing it. On the one extreme is you don't do anything. On the other extreme is you can, get this professionally produced in a studio, right? So, but the most basic kind of editing, the stuff that I like to do is to adjust the volume. There is a certain loudness that is considered standard for podcasts because you don't want people to listen to podcasts and it's all one is really kind of you can hardly hear, and then a second later somebody yells in your ear. So the idea is that they all have more or less the same loudness, noise reduction, some echoes that, you want to cut out any long silences or any whatever you want to cut out. I hardly do any of that. And you can add an intro and outro with a bit of music, and you can put a promo section in the middle of it, but that's all stuff if you can do, but you don't have to do, right? So again, bottom line, do as little as possible or as much as you can stick to, but don't use it as an excuse to procrastinate. Okay, publishing and promoting. So once you've got your episode, once you've got your audio, now, that's what we just mentioned already a second ago. what are you going to do with it? Okay, your podcast needs a host, and you don't want to just upload it to your website. There's, you know, in one of the PDFs I'm gonna put there's a link to an article if you wanted to know why that isn't a good idea. So basically your normal web server isn't made for that, and you might even sort of breach the service agreement with them. So you really don't want to do that. You want to have a host. So their popular hosting providers are Blueberry, that's the one I use, Buzzsprout, Libsyn, Spreaker, and an interesting alternative is Anchor, and that's the one I'm going to show you in a second. That's the one I've used for my new podcast, just to try it out, really. So I'm geeky like that, I can't help it. So yeah, there's basically several options. All these ones here, they have the basic plan starts like at about $12 a month, and Anchor is free. So where's always that bit like, you know, I make sure that I download all the episodes, because you never know if that kind of, you know, yeah. So sometimes like you don't know where that goes, and you know, and what happens with this. So it's great to start really quickly, but yeah, make sure you download your episodes just in case. And yeah, the other part of it is you want to have a representation like a website, you know, either a page on your own website. And if you use WordPress, this is actually really simple, because yeah, there's a WordPress plugin that makes it really easy to upload your audio to your host and create a page for your episode on your WordPress blog, sort of all in one go. And that's actually really, once that's all set up, is really quite simple. Now, okay, when you think about how people actually listen to podcasts, then you know people use iTunes, people use Stitcher, people use SoundCloud, and there's all these different apps. I've got one that's called Podcast Republic. It's the one that I like best, but there's loads and loads of podcast apps, and they all get their list of podcasts basically from a handful of directories, and the way you get your podcast onto iTunes or Stitcher or any of the others is that you have to submit them there, right? So when you set up a podcast on your podcast host, they give you a URL that's called RSS feed. If you remember the RSS feeds from blogging quite a while ago, it's that kind of same thing. It's an RSS feed that you have to then submit to the individual directories. And if you go to Stitcher, for example, or iTunes, it's pretty straightforward. You kind of go submit a podcast, and then you fill in a form where they ask you for the title, the description, you know, a category. You need to upload your artwork, and then you submit it. And then in a week, or sometimes iTunes might take a bit longer, they say, okay, your podcast is now on Stitcher or TuneIn or Spotify or wherever. So it's basically you fill in the form, send all the details, and then they come back to you and tell you that your show is now available. And that's when you can then find it in all the apps, and people can subscribe to it from there. Now, how to promote your podcast? Well, there's a million ways of going about that. You know, and it's basically depends on what kind of audience you already have, or if you're starting from scratch. But it's one of those things that actually is worth keeping in mind, that podcasting isn't really a medium where you talk about an audience in the thousands, sort of from, you know, I've reached, you know, my LinkedIn post has been seen by I don't know how many thousand people, right? I've read the other day that if you get 136 episode downloads, you already have more than 50% of podcasts, right? And if you get more than whatever 1,000, you're already in the top 2% or something like that. So it's not necessarily, there's only very small number of podcasts that get these like huge thousands and thousands of downloads each episode. So for the most parts, the numbers are a lot smaller, and that comes back down to what we talked about at the very beginning. It's from my experience and how I understand this podcasting, it's more about intimacy than about masses. You know, I'd rather have 50 people listen to my podcast and, you know, and 2 of them end up working with me than having an audience of thousands and thousands who just kind of don't give a damn, right? So it's not one to build this mass audience quickly. And it's at the end of the day, it's like starting a YouTube channel. You know, so just because you create 2 episodes doesn't mean that people magically, you know, subscribe. You're gonna be the famous YouTuber next week. So it's really not a medium for quick and direct return on investment. It's, you know, it's more valuable for relationship building and trust and connection than it is for a mass audience, which is really sort of in context with the old question, how do I make money from a podcast? Yes, there are ways, but yeah, as I said, they're not normally or not often that direct. So for a coach, for example, that a listener or a guest becomes a client, that would be probably the most direct way of making money from a podcast, or that you get referred to other people. So that's definitely something that can happen and doesn't have to take long. And it has happened to me. So yeah, you can promote your own products if you sell other things like courses or whatever. And so yeah, people often think of sponsors, and yeah, I mean, sponsors is an option, but I mean, you do have to have the numbers. And I know a podcast, it's quite funny. There's a bunch of New York girls, a couple of New York girls, and the podcast is called Girls Gotta Eat. And they're basically the 2 of them, and they, you know, they have a chat about, you know, about boys and relationship and work, and you know, it's really quite funny. And then they have a guest, and they have pretty high caliber guests these days. And that's how I even found out about it, because somebody I follow was a guest there, and they have lots of sponsor segments in there. You know, they have loads of sponsors, and they basically turned it into a whole business. They do live events, you know, based on that show, and they have lots of sponsors, and, you know, so they basically have the numbers to make a business out of it. But I don't think that would be really something that you can achieve quickly, you know, after starting. So yeah, there's the old Patreon kind of thing where you can choose to ask your audience to donate. And I haven't heard from too many people that have that sort of work really well. So I don't know, like, it's the same old thing. If you have a name already, then, you know, then people probably are happy to donate for you to keep doing what you're doing. But if you're starting out, I really doubt that you'd make a lot of money from getting people to sign up on Patreon. Now, an interesting question, if you want to have guests and if you want to grow an audience, then like having guests for all or some of your episodes is definitely the way to go. Yeah, so there are directories that connect, like podcast guests, and there's another one now that's called Spot a Guest. That's pretty new, and they really link, or they connect. The whole purpose of them is to connect podcast hosts with podcast guests. So yeah, there are Facebook groups that are specializing in that. And yeah, you can just, it's one of those things that you can reach out to people to invite them to be a guest on your show. And most people feel rather flattered. So I found, like, for the Passion Business podcast, I initially wasn't sure. So I kind of I said, well, it's going to be a mixture of guests and solo shows, because I wasn't sure whether I was going to have enough guests. And after a month or so, you know, it was like people would contact me. So there's just never ever a shortage of guests, but it obviously depends on the topic. You know, in my case, I need somebody with an entrepreneurial story, with, you know, somebody who has started a business and shared their story. So I'm never ever going to run out of guests. If you have a more specific topic, it might not be that easy. So there's like, I was a guest on one of my guest shows that I don't think it's even rolled out yet, and it's called Show Not Tell. So what he wants to do is he wants to showcase his guests' expertise, not by having them talk about it, but by having them demonstrate. So the concept was that, he said, well, okay, you come on the show and you bring a client and then you coach them, in front of me and the audience. So you basically do a live hot seat coaching session. And so that basically gives me an opportunity to demonstrate what I do, but I think for him, it isn't going to be quite as easy to find people who are up for that and who also have clients who are up for that. So, depends on what you do. But so yeah, that was pretty much sort of what I wanted to show you was, hang on, where am I? I wanted to show you the Anchor app because it is actually, it was surprisingly quick to, I'm going to share this thing again. The Anchor app was surprisingly quick to get my new podcast off the ground, right? So it's because, and the other thing that I like about it, and that I poked around with it before, was that it actually has an app on the phone. So you can actually create your podcast episodes directly on the phone and don't do anything else, right? So you have you create an account. It's free. I haven't paid a cent for this. And so you set up your podcast, and it's the same as everywhere else. You have your cover art, you have your name, you've got your description, you've got your category, the external website, that's the page on my website, the name, blah. So it's exactly the same as for any other podcast. And the way you can create an episode is really quite interesting. And so what I'm doing here, so I'm obviously on the PC, but it's the same thing on the phone app. So you say, okay, create an episode, and then you can say, okay, I record, and you can basically talk straight into your phone. And each of the segments that you record is going to be stored in the library. So I record my little intro, and so I can say, okay, take that intro, and then, well, I'm not going to kind of do that now on top of the Zoom thing, but then you can say, okay, now I do a segment, I want to, and then you just talk into your phone, and then you can add your, you can add your outro or whatever, right? And you can put music underneath, and so you basically put together an episode, and then you save it, and it's out, right? And so you can have your pre-recorded intro outro segments or promo segments or whatever you want, and then you just talk into your phone, and you can literally publish an episode within however long it takes you to speak into your phone to say what you want to say, and then the episode will show directly on the website. And they basically say, okay, now mine is available on Spotify and Anchor, but it's basically submitted for to be included on loads of other directories. So mine is so new still that doesn't actually show up there any. But yeah, if you go to Anchor FM, Don't Just Learn, Create, you basically have a podcast, and that literally took me like next to nothing to create. And here where it says listen to Spotify, once it's submitted to iTunes and whatever, all the other directories will show up here. People can leave a voice message that I can then include in a segment. So for a solo show, actually one of my guests, the guy with the Show Don't Tell, or no, somebody else anyway, used Anchor to try and invite me, but that was a pain in the butt. We ended up using Zoom. But for solo episodes, I found it was extremely quick, so it's definitely something to look at, because you might, you know, just need your phone. So that's really something that I wanted to show you that might be worth checking out. It would probably be the quickest way to get a podcast off the ground. So yeah, that's basically it from me. And so I'm all yours for questions. If there's anything I haven't
Before
seen.
we go to questions, I just want to thank you. That was incredible. Thank you so much. I think, yeah, I don't know if anybody has questions. I just wanted to say, I don't think I could absorb all of it. So it's going to be up for us to look at. It's going to be recorded, so we can go back to it. That's what I would suggest to everybody. If, you know, Anka said so much, you know, I know our brain only takes so much information.
Oh, and it was just really like a flyover. So obviously we can't go into, you know, into all the details. That's why obviously there's the recording. I'm also going to put the actual presentation up, and I've got like a PDF which, you know, covers the same thing. And so there's yeah, so basically everything I've talked about, I'm going to put in a digestible format. And there's the, you know, yeah, obviously this isn't nobody would be able to remember all of that. So if you have any questions, if you want me to help you in any way, just get in touch. So Laurie says, I'm a techno geek. I love it.
What'd you say? I didn't get that. What?
Laurie said, I'm a techno geek wannabe. That's so quick. That's so cute. Yeah, so it's and see, the thing is, it's one thing is like I think the planning part is really the bit where that nobody can take away from you, to think about what is it that I try and achieve with it, you know, and out of that say, okay, it makes sense for this to be a guest show, it makes sense for that to be a solo show, it made sense to be whatever, you know. So that's the part that nobody can take away from you, to do the actual implementation, to put all of this in place, you know, like, yeah, there's people who can help you with that. I can help with that. Loads of other people can help with that. And once it's set up, you know, that's to actually then, you know, say once you've got your website and once you've got everything sort of in place, then to just create a new audio and put this up there, you know, that's like a thing of, you know, 5 steps that you can follow, or even that you can give to somebody else to do, you know. So that's really, you know, there are loads of options there. Laurie, huh?
Which Laurie are you referring to, me or Laurie Carpenos?
Carpenos, what, unmute yourself if you want to. She's pointing down, and I don't really know what I don't know, Laurie, if you want to unmute yourself. And
Diane has a question. Diane, can you unmute yourself?
I don't know. I'm like really thick now. She's pointing down, and I don't know what to do.
Well, it's Greek to me. I don't know either.
Oh, this is great. Thank you. Thank you, Anka. This was, I'm amazed at your knowledge about podcasts. This was really good. Thank you for all the information. For me, it's really overwhelming. It's too much to absorb. But I have a question. I don't have a website that involves investing money. I do have a website, but I called it something else.
Mm.
That would mean I'd have to buy another one.
No. Because that's the thing. It's like, no, say for example, in my case, right? So my podcasts, both of them are related to what I do on my website, right? So it makes sense to have a page for them on my website, right? So because, you know, if I want to send people to my to the podcast, really I want to send them to my website. But there's no, like, if that's in your case, one hasn't got anything to do with the other, then, well, it wouldn't make sense to have it on the same thing. And if you, for example, you know, the page that, hang on, give me just, so, you know, like, you don't have to, like, it's not mandatory that you now need a separate website. You know, say if you go and use the Anchor app, for example, you know, this is what it gives you, you know, and you've got you've got a page, and it gives a description, and it has a link to the episodes, and the episodes have space to, you know, to have the description here. And there's really no need that you necessarily need something else.
So I don't have, I don't strictly need a web page, a website.
No, and say there's, for example, you know, like the Blueberry host that I use for the Passion Business podcast, they basically offer, most plans include a little website, you know, like, it's, and that's fine, you know, like, it's not mandatory.
Okay, so my other question is, I have a title, you know how long I've had a title. And I'm very clear about why I want to share it with the audience. I have something to say, I have a message. I think I have quite a strong message. And I think it would be beneficial for people to hear what my guests have to say, because my podcast would have guests. I speak better with guests for now. Only God knows if I'll be able to speak better on my own, I don't know. But for now, I would want a guest. What I'm in Dutch, there's an expression, and it's perfect for what I'm doing. It's called "Ik zie allerlei beren op de weg," and that means I'm seeing bears on the road now, in the middle of the road. Now, invisible bears. So what's stopping me is I've created a logo. If I want to. I know the title, I know why I want to do it, I know where I can reach out to invite guests. What is blocking me is all the steps taking after you record the audio. You have to edit it, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to upload it, you have to find a host. That, to me, and I'm quite the geek. Yeah. Because with YouTube, it's really easy. You upload, blah, blah, you edit, which... the other part of editing and sound I'm finding overwhelmingly difficult.
Now, so in your case, I would really, hang on.
Go for it.
Hang on, I'm going to share my screen again because I would really suggest that you have a look at this Anchor app, because you don't really have to, like, it's okay. Can you see the screen, right? So, yeah. You know, if you go and you create your podcast here, you know, you've got your artwork, your description, blah, blah, blah. And now we say, okay, let's create a new episode, right? So, and you can click or upload drop your audio here. So you can you record your intro once, or you don't record, you record it, you know, it's part of the recording, and you just upload your Zoom audio from here, and nobody says that you have to, you know, edit and whatever, and you know, so it's like,
no, knowing me, I want to edit. I know me. I want a polished product. I don't want to be half measures. I don't want it to be that way. So I know me.
So, well, now you're getting yourself into this sort of, you know, basically chasing your own tail. You don't want to have it simple, but then you make it complex, and then you get turned off by the complexity you've just created.
No, actually, the complexity is not about actually doing the editing. Complexity is being afraid of doing the editing. That's the. So you see, because I have edited before, I have edited videos, I have produced clipped videos. So this is, it's seemingly it seems to me that downloading music, it seems that there's so many steps.
But see, the downloading music and stuff, like all that stuff you do once, you know? So you don't fiddle around, stuff around with music every time. You basically, if you
Lori, could you mute yourself, please? Lori Karkanos. Sorry, I interrupted you, Anke.
No, I was just trying to sort of mute people as well. No, it's like, you know, the sort of an intro with music, you create that once, you know, and then you just pop it in front of your episode.
And creating also the intro, is that created once or every time?
The what?
You say, hi, I'm Diane Schwierup, and this is my podcast, blah, blah.
Well, you know, it's like whatever you want, because you know, some people have one that's pre-recorded, right? And so, and then other people will use that to introduce their guest, you know, so they don't, you know, so, and I've started having it recorded, recorded, and now recently I've started to just like, stuff it and just say it and introduce the guest. You know, I record that separately. I just, when I have, I mean, you know, when I do the interview, I just have the interview and then I record the intro separately. But then I've been on podcasts where people just say, okay, I'll just introduce you. And then, so they basically start the Zoom recording saying, hey, this is the so-and-so podcast, you know, and today my guest is blah, blah, blah. And they do all of that. And so basically, which means they have hardly any editing to do afterwards.
Okay.
You know? So that's...
I think what I have to do is just choose my groups, have a powerful message and launch it, and then see from there. Thank you for your time. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. So we're gonna want to see it in the group then. The pressure's on now.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into the coaches group as well, and I'm gonna for sure. Because it's been on my mind. It hasn't let me go. Once it hasn't let me go, it means, you know, usually I think to myself, you just blah, 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 blah. Just see if it stays there. If it stays there, do something about it. If it doesn't, forget it.
Yeah, I do that. And yours has been around for a while, I know.
Well, yes. And it's really strong. And I keep talking about it, even in Lori's group. I keep saying the same thing over and over and over. Why not invite guests who share and who fit with my vision and teach others and give others permission to do the same? I'm trying not to give anything away, but anyway, thanks, Anke, for your time. It's been wonderful. Thanks.
Well, thank you. So, okay, if there's any other questions, let me know. Lori, unmute yourself. I'm trying to unmute you. If I can't do it, you do it. I think my internet is, I don't know whether you can still hear me. My internet seems to be like shoddy at the moment. I see, well, let's see whether this recovers.
Hear me now?
Oh yeah, I can hear you now. So you're coming, yeah, you're coming. My internet is a bit shoddy.
Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful. I can't see you, only your still picture, but
yes, I've turned the video off because oh no, it's better now. Because I had the internet connection a bit chunky, and that's why, like always, first thing as I turn the video off.
Well, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much for this. Anke, am I saying your name right?
Almost, Anke. It's with an A at the end. Yep, that's the one.
Oh, that's how I wrote it down, A-N-K-A. So I must have heard somebody say Anke.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's it.
Anke. And that's a beautiful scene behind you. How do you do that?
That's a Zoom setting. It's in the video settings of Zoom, and it's called virtual background. And it's a photo that I took, so you can use your own photo. All you need is a strong graphics card. Like you need a strong PC that has a good graphics card, and then because if you don't, Zoom will say, nah, can't do that. And but if you have a good graphics card, then I can do Zoom calls on the beach.
I had no idea. There's so much to learn in this world of technology.
I know. I found out
Thank you.
recently. Yeah, poking around as usual.
In fact, I heard, I don't know if this is true, but if we create a webinar on Zoom, that we can just convert that to an MP3. Is that correct? And that becomes a podcast?
Well, that's actually, yeah, as the recording from any Zoom call, when Zoom records, it always gives you two versions. It gives you the video version and the audio version. And the audio version is an audio. Yeah, you can just, you can upload that to your podcast host, or you can then go edit that and add your intro to it. And so, yeah, that's basically how most people record their like, if you're doing a guest show or something, you basically do that. You record a Zoom call and then take that audio. That's how I do mine, and that's how most of the people that I've been a guest on do theirs. Just record a Zoom call, and then you pop your intro in the front, and you pop your little music at the back, and you upload it to your podcast host. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So I also want to know, like, will we be able to hire you as a consultant as we get further into this?
Absolutely.
We'll just contact you through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just get in touch and we'll have a chat, and yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, great. I just have a few other quick questions. One is, I'm so glad you recorded this because, like Lori said, I'm going to have to listen to it several times. I'm afraid.
That's normal. There's so much stuff. That's for sure.
And if you could upload it to YouTube, I would get captioning because I have hearing issues.
Yeah.
And I love captioning. Captioning is my best friend. So if that's possible, oh wow.
I'll do that. This is a long video. I normally, when I do shorter videos, I do captions all the time, because I'm the first one who will be on the phone and I'm not having the sound on. And people say that apparently 80% of people watch videos and don't have the sound on. So I'm all with you there on the caption front. Yeah. I mean, if I get YouTube's automatic captions with my accent, they usually turn out quite funny. So they need a lot of editing.
Yes, yeah. Where are you from?
I'm from Germany originally.
Oh. And you're living where now?
I'm in Spain, in the south of Spain.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah. No, but I'll do that. I'll upload that to YouTube, and definitely, yeah.
And the person who is doing the website for the book that I wrote with Christine Heath, The Secret of Love, her name is Misty. Would she be able to watch this recording also? Because she's going to help us do the graphics, so the graphics go with the website to the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll put it on YouTube. Yeah, definitely. And if she's got, I mean, is it going to be a WordPress website? Do you know?
I think so. I think it is a WordPress.
And I mean, there's a plugin. I mean, I use it and it works really well. That helps make the integration easier, to have your audio on your podcast host and then to basically have your sort of the episode page where the show notes and all that go on your website. And there's a plugin that makes that cooperation really simple. And so she might know it anyway, but if not, she's, more than welcome to get in touch.
Yeah, I wrote that down when you mentioned that during the recording. My personal website is on Squarespace, but I don't know that I don't think they utilize plugins that I'm aware of. I don't know.
No, I don't. Well, I don't know. I've poked around with Squarespace, but I know I haven't. I'm too geeky for that. It doesn't give me enough control, so I've not used. I don't know what they do with, because they do offer quite a lot of integration with mailing lists and stuff like that. So they do all of that. So there's a possibility that but then on the other hand, if you look at the website I have for the new podcast, that's not integrated. That's just like embedded, the little player embedded, you know, and that you can always do that. So yeah, there's always ways.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
usually, and I think that the main takeaway is that at the end of the day, technically, it's a lot simpler than most people think. You know, you can always go to, you know, studio quality, whatever, you know, but there's really no need to use technology as an excuse to procrastinate on it, you know. So with the smartphones we have these days, you know, there's really no reason. And if you have, like Diane, if you have this strong idea and this message, and you have this all really clear, and in your case with the book, you know, well, yeah, you know, so there's really no reason why you shouldn't be able to do it.
You were a little easier for me to hear than Diane was. I got a lot of feedback from Diane's microphone. I don't know if you did, or if that's just my headset.
I don't know. That could be Zoom. I don't know, because I could hear her well, so I don't know. That might be a Zoom thing, or the internet connection on her end or on mine, or I don't know.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Thank you. You answered my questions for now.
Yeah. Well, I'm here. If you have any more, feel free to get in touch. And so I'll put all the, you know, the PDF and the I've got a PDF for the stuff about how to be a guest, and that, like, if you get a book out, that would be interesting as well to get on other people's shows, you know.
I want to get rid of my New York accent first. That's my procrastination thing.
That's a big procrastination thing. You know, what's wrong with your accent? No. If I don't use my accent, then you can't use your accent either.
European accents are beautiful.
Yeah, but
New York, not so much.
I don't know. I like yours. Actually, the thing is, you never know. You know, I think most people have, like, the first time you hear your own voice recorded, it's all like, oh, you know, and then you get used to it, and then you hear what other people say, and you really realize how our own perception of our voice is like so far away from what other people hear. You know, and I always thought I've got such a sort of kind of, I don't know, I always thought I have an ugly voice, you know, like I never thought I had a nice voice. And then sometimes people tell me like some people fall asleep. I'm laughing by Diane said she fell asleep listening to something the other day. And I've had a lady in one of my Facebook group saying, oh, you know, I put on your audios to relax and to fall asleep. And I thought I never would have thought. So it's like basically the way we hear our voice is just so different from what other people hear, you know. So I don't know. You've got a lovely voice. Yeah. There's a lady who's got a voice. I heard her on a podcast, and she really made a business out of it. She has, like, I thought it's like, God, the poor thing. She's I don't know what age she is, but she's over 40 or older, you know, and she's got a voice like an 8-year-old girl. Yeah, she really talks like that. You know, it's really almost kind of irritating. And so she basically, she made a business out of it. Her business is now called Little Voice Big Business. You know, like she really made, because she said it's her big life challenge, you know, that she never used to feel comfortable to speak out and to, you know, because there was always that kind of that reaction, people wouldn't take her seriously, you know, and she really turned this around and made this her uniqueness factor, you know, like literally, I don't remember her name, but the thing was called, like, her business is called Little Voice Big Business, you know, so yeah. Diane says the Squeaky Voice podcast. That's true. Yeah. So yeah, I think if there's no more questions, I think I'm gonna at least stop the recording so that whoever's listening to it then won't have to listen to us chat. Laurie.
I wanted to say real quick, did you stop the recording already?
No?
I wanted to say this on recording. When you put somebody to sleep, that's the highest compliment.
Oh, thank you. I
I was in Super Coach when Mara Gleason was talking. I was in the front row, and she would talk, and I would fall asleep. And she told me later on that that was a very high compliment. So just saying.
Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't sort of, I loved hearing that, but it was just not what I expected. You know, that's not how I perceive my voice. You know, I think it's that, yeah, so you kind of, and then you get used to it. Initially, you have all sort of hang-ups about what your voice sounds like and what other people think and whatever. And then after a while, you just get used to it.
That's it. Well, thank you. I also wanted to get on before we end. And thank you very, very much for such an excellent episode. I don't know, I'm calling it an episode. It seemed like an episode. But anyway, like there's going to be more episodes. Part B, part C, part D, part E. But thank you, thank you. And I already know I now want to do this, and I need your help too. So you did a great, great job.
Thank you.
And it's wonderful when we can share like this with a group, teach us something that you know is going to benefit everybody.
Yeah. So
thank you for putting yourself out there and being willing to be that voice for us so that we can have more of these kind of episodes where people can share what they do and everybody can learn from it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for giving the platform and having this wonderful space to do it in.
Yeah. Spain, here we come. Woo-hoo!
There we go.